What's up, everybody? This is Big Sarge back with another video. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the consequences of getting a dishonorable discharge. And hopefully, you never have to find yourself in this position. So, with that being said, let's get into it. All right, so maybe you're thinking about joining the military, or maybe you're already in, or maybe you're just curious about the different ways people leave the military and what it means for the rest of their lives. Well, there's one type of discharge that people whisper about, often surrounded by drama, rumors, and confusion, and that is a dishonorable discharge. It sounds bad, and guess what? It is bad, like life-changingly bad. And this isn't like getting fired from a job or dropping out of school. A dishonorable discharge from the military carries long-lasting and sometimes permanent consequences that can affect every single part of your future. So in this video, I'm going to break it all down for you. I'm going to tell you what a dishonorable discharge actually is, why someone might get one, what it does to your job prospects, rights, benefits, and reputation, and why, if you're ever in a situation where it's a possibility, you need to fight like hell to avoid it. So with that being said, let's go. All right, so exactly what is a dishonorable discharge? So in the military, how you leave the service matters. And there's a bunch of different types of discharges. You got what's called the honorable discharge, and this is the gold standard. This pretty much means that you did your job well and you followed the rules. You have what is called a general discharge, or under honorable conditions. And this is not perfect, but it's still okay. You have what is called an other than honorable discharge. And this is where things start getting into serious territory like bad conduct, misconduct, etc. You have a bad conduct discharge, and this usually comes from a court martial. Then you have the worst of them all, and that is a dishonorable discharge, and this is the nuclear option. So a dishonorable discharge is issued only after a general court martial, which is the military's version of a felony criminal trial. It's not just for a bad attitude or showing up late. This kind of discharge is reserved for serious crimes. We're talking things like murder, sexual assault, desertion, or even treason. So in civilian terms, it's like getting convicted of a felony and being publicly branded for it. Now, it's rare, but when it happens, it will stick with you for the rest of your life. All right, so let's talk about exactly how do you get a dishonorable discharge. So like I said, this is not from minor screw-ups. To receive a dishonorable discharge, you have to be convicted at a general court martial. And the court has to determine that your offense was so serious that you don't deserve to ever be considered a U.S. military veteran. And some examples of offenses that could result in a dishonorable discharge are as follows. So you get convicted of murder or attempted murder, sexual assault or rape, treason or espionage, desertion, especially in combat, drug trafficking or repeated violent crimes, mutiny, or abusing prisoners or violating the laws of war. Now, it's not just about breaking military rules. It's about breaking laws and doing it in a way that disgraces the uniform. So if you're convicted of one of these crimes and sentenced to a dishonorable discharge, you don't just lose your job, you lose your military identity, your benefits, and often your freedom. And many of these sentences, they do include prison time. All right, so let's talk about what happens after you get a dishonorable discharge. Well, here's where things really start going downhill for you. A dishonorable discharge isn't just a military punishment. It becomes a part of your permanent record. And unfortunately, that record will follow you into the civilian world. So let's take a look at some real world consequences. The first one is you're going to lose all of your VA benefits forever. That's right. You get no VA health care, no GI Bill, no VA home loans, no transition assistance, nothing. If you served 3 years in combat but were dishonorably discharged for a later crime, your service benefits essentially vanish like you never existed in the military at all. And for a lot of veterans, these benefits are a lifeline because they help people get treatment for physical and mental injuries, go to college, buy a first home, or find jobs to help them navigate civilian life. And with a dishonorable discharge, you get none of that. Another consequence is you lose the right to call yourself a veteran. Now, this one can sting because when people hear the word veteran, they think of honor, sacrifice, and pride. But if you're dishonorably discharged, then you legally cannot call yourself a veteran. That means no veterans' preferences for jobs, no access to veterans organizations, no inclusion in military honors, parades, or memorials, and no military funerals unless you appeal and win. So basically, you're effectively erased from the military family. Another consequence is you may lose your civil rights. So, depending upon the crime that led to your discharge, you could lose important civil rights. So, for example, you might lose the right to vote in some states for felonies. You might lose the right to own or possess a firearm. And you might lose the right to hold certain public offices or government jobs. Since a dishonorable discharge is often the result of a felony level offense, these restrictions apply just like they would for a civilian criminal. Another consequence is your job opportunities might take a major hit. So let's be honest, your discharge status matters to employers. So while not every company checks for a DD 214, which is your discharge document, however, many do, especially for good paying jobs or anything involving government contracts, security clearances, law enforcement, healthcare, aviation, and finance. Now, a dishonorable discharge basically screams that this person broke trust in the worst possible way. So even if you were a solid soldier for years before making one terrible mistake, that mistake is often the only thing future employers will see. And while it is illegal to discriminate against someone just for being a veteran with a discharge, most hiring managers will simply choose someone else and they won't even tell you why. Another consequence is you could face serious stigma in civilian life because people do judge. Now, it's unfortunate, but it is real. So, whether it's potential employers, landlords, or even family and friends, a dishonorable discharge does raise eyebrows. It's seen as a red flag, a sign of dangerous behavior, or proof that you couldn't follow rules or be trusted. And unless you can explain it, which you might not want to, people will fill in the blanks themselves. Even some fellow veterans will distance themselves because, in their eyes, a dishonorable discharge is a betrayal of the uniform. Another consequence is you may struggle with identity and mental health. So here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Leaving the military under any negative conditions is hard, but a dishonorable discharge can crush your sense of identity. And many former service members who are dishonorably discharged, they experience shame, isolation, depression, anger, and PTSD with nowhere to go for help. Now, the military, this is a tight knit culture, and being forcibly removed from it under such severe terms, this can feel like being exiled from your own family. And it can lead to serious mental health challenges. And because you're cut off from VA services, it's going to be extremely hard for you to get the help that you need. Another consequence is you may have trouble getting housing or loans. So that dishonorable mark can follow you beyond employment and into your financial life. If a background check includes military service history, and many do, landlords and lenders, they may reject rental applications, deny mortgage loans, charge you higher interest rates, or just label you as high risk. Now, it is frustrating and it could feel like a punishment after you've been punished, but it's the reality for many people with this type of discharge status. And then another consequence is your record is permanent unless you fight to change it. So a dishonorable discharge does not go away on its own. It's part of your military and criminal record, and it will show up on job applications, during security screenings, when you apply for benefits, or if you apply for a government license or clearance. Now, in some cases, you can appeal your discharge. It's called a discharge upgrade, and it involves submitting a request to a military review board. But it's a long shot because you're going to need strong documentation, evidence of injustice, discrimination, or rehabilitation. You're going to need some legal assistance, often from a civilian attorney. And most upgrade requests, they do get denied unless the circumstances were truly mishandled or unjust. Another consequence is your family can be affected too. So your dishonorable discharge doesn't just impact you. It can impact the people around you. Your spouse may lose access to benefits. Your children may lose educational assistance. Your parents may struggle to understand or support you. Your name may be left off memorials or family trees. It could be a whole bunch of stuff. So it's just a ripple effect, and it can damage relationships for years. And then you're going to always find yourself having to explain why you got a dishonorable discharge. So every time someone sees that you served in the military on your resume, they're eventually going to ask, what type of discharge did you receive? And in that moment, you have to decide whether to be honest and potentially lose that opportunity, or lie, which could backfire badly later on. It can be exhausting. Can wear people down. And for many dishonorably discharged veterans, it becomes a defining part of their story, even when they want to move on. So, what's the takeaway? A dishonorable discharge isn't just a military punishment, it's a life altering label. It affects your legal rights, your health care, your education, your housing, your relationships, and your self-worth. It's not something to take lightly, and it's absolutely something you want to avoid. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but it does mean that if you ever find yourself in a situation where your actions could lead to serious legal trouble in the military, you need to pause, think, and choose wisely. Go ask for help, talk to your chain of command, contact JAG, speak to a mentor, because once that discharge is on paper, you don't get a do-over. So let's say you did get a dishonorable discharge. Can you rebuild your life after getting that discharge? Well, it's going to be extremely hard, but it's not impossible. And some people do rebuild. They get therapy and address their trauma. They work low-wage jobs to prove themselves again. They eventually find employers willing to give them a second chance, or they go out there and start their own business, or they volunteer or mentor others to avoid their path. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take some humility, and it takes a strong support system. So yes, rebuilding is possible, but avoiding a dishonorable discharge in the first place is 1,000 times easier than recovering from one. All right, so let's wrap all this up. Joining the military is an incredible opportunity. It can open doors, create purpose, and change lives, but it also comes with responsibility. When you wear the uniform, you're representing something bigger than yourself. A dishonorable discharge, this throws all of that away. So whether you're a recruit, an active duty service member, or just someone trying to understand the system better, take it seriously, be smart, be aware, and always strive to uphold the standard, because your future and your name are worth it.